So, hey guys, back again, and now we're going to finish this application adding the functionality to this form or input. So, we are here inside the functions.js. So let me just get that into my other screen so we can start. So, we already have the ID that we want to use inside the index.html. So let's take a look at this. So we have the weather form ID here inside the form on line 20. So let's grab that constant city form equals document that query selector. Since this is an ID, we add this hash and we use the ID we want, weather form. So that is the only element that we need. And now we need to start with the functionality that is going to fetch and append the information into the document. So the function that we're going to create now is the get weather conditions equals to an async function. Here we're going to take the city and pass it into our API. So what I'm using, so let's take a look at this. I used before APIXU, okay, but now they have a new product or API called weatherstack. So you just need to sign in. It's free, and they will add you, or they will give you the key right away. So it's not a big deal to sign in or to create an account. So now we use await, and I will show you how to use that API key. So let me just grab all this. I'm using here backticks, or I will use backticks. So this is what you will use, the HTTP API weatherstack.com current access key, the key they give you, the query equals to what you need to search, and here we add the variable of the city. Since this is the fetch, then we're going to add this with the response. We're going to pass the response to JSON, and we need to do this once again. Then now we grab the data, the JSON data, and we can start using it. So let's just console.log data, and I think I have that. So let's see. Okay, I think I don't have the. Let me just take a look. Quick look. Yeah, I don't have it. I think this version, this should come, but I'm not sure. Okay, developer tools, of course. I don't know why it didn't give me that with, but okay. So just let me go back. Okay, so now we're using APIXU no, a weatherstack. So if I type, okay, I forgot to do something because, oh, sorry, I'm kind of lost with this. What I need to do, or what we need to do, is to add document that add event listener. Okay, so we need to wait when or after the DOM is fully loaded. So we're going to use DOM content load, content loaded. We pass an event And now this will ensure that we have, or assure that we have the form already set when we try to access it with the document query selector on line 1. So we're going to use city form. It's been a while since I used a regular JavaScript. Add event listener. So also it's a nice refresher if you haven't worked with this in a while. Submit. We pass the event. So this is going to add a listener to the submit event inside the form. Okay. In order to prevent the default behavior that is going to be the refresh of the page when we submit, then we're going to use the event that prevent default on line 16. Now we're going to add a little validation. So if document that query selector city that value is not equals to an empty string. So where is this city? Okay, let me just move that there. So the city is this input. So we're going to check if the input has something before or when we send it, if it has a value that is not equals to this empty string. Then we're going to say let conditions. Of course, you can do this better. That query selector, because I'm using just query selector to select. Well, you could grab them here, just like I'm doing here, but you know it's not a big deal on how you want to do it. Conditions. So what is conditions? Okay, let me just check, because okay, that seems to be fine. Okay, so let's just wait for this, because I'm going to finish this because the conditions is something that we're going to append inside the document, okay, inside the application. So right now we're just checking for that. So this should be conditions div, because this is going to be a div. Nice. So if conditions div, so right now this doesn't exist, so this is it's going to work, but it's not going to append anything because there's nothing with the ID of conditions. Document that query selector. So we are going to append the conditions div that we will add in a second into the query selector, the main tag. So, but we first need to check, since we need to append it and remove it when we make a search, we're going to check if this is inside the DOM, okay, if this div is already appended. What we're going to do every time we submit the form is to check, and if that is appended, then we're going to remove the conditions div in order to populate it again with the correct information, because if we don't do that, it's going to append another div with the ID of conditions. Okay, so after this we use get weather conditions, document that get element by ID. I'm using a get element by ID instead of query selector here. City that value. So if, so what's going on here, as I said, we're going to check if this query selector returns something, then this is not going to be null, the conditions div, and if the conditions div is set to true, then we remove the conditions ID, because that means it is added inside the DOM, which we're going to do inside here. So let's just wait a little bit for that. So after this if, we're going to add an else, and this else is going to be console.log, a simple console. You must provide a city, and that's it. Why we're using this console.log? You can append another element or whatever. You will see how in a second. But since we're checking here that the value of the city input is not an empty string, meaning that it has something, then we pass inside this get weather conditions the value of that input, and if that is set to an empty string, then we just console.log and we do nothing. So right now we're going to finish inside this. So let's save this. We could even test it. Okay, I'm gonna type a value of 17, function 17. Where is electros? Oh, okay, because I forgot this. Okay, this is the difference between a get element by ID. Here you don't need to specify the hash, okay, when you call an ID, but inside query selector you need to do it, okay, just like we're doing here, which is something I forgot. So this refreshes because we have the reload, and you can see we get the request location. Okay, I mean the request with the current location, and also the request, because these are three objects. You can see country Mexico, and Cancun, Quintana Roo, America Cancun, and the UTC less 5, temperature, pressure, and this means that we are getting the correct or we're sending the correct information inside the API. Is being processed, and the API is responding with the conditions of the city we add here. So if we type something that is nothing, it's going to return an error. Okay, but since every time we are sending a new request, and we're going to be removing and adding information below this, that shouldn't be a problem. This error shouldn't be a problem. So let's take a look at this now. So we already have this console.log data that is what we are looking for inside, or that we are checking here inside the console. Now what we need to do is to say let div equals to document that create element. So this element is going to be a div. We use div that set attribute, right? Set attribute. So this is regular JavaScript, okay, with a React and not our Angular. Most of the times we are not going to use this kind of behavior, but with JavaScript we need to do it. So we're going to set an attribute inside this div that we're going to append later inside the DOM, inside the document. Okay, so we're going to append an ID. We can do this right away. because this is now inside the memory, but it's not added into the document. Okay, so but we can add any attribute we want and then append it inside the document. So this one is going to be conditions, the div that we are looking for here. Okay, on line 21. Now we say let image equals to document that create element. Again, we're going to create an image that is stored again inside the memory. So let's say image that set attribute. So remember that the images need a source in order to display something, and we're going to use data that is this object. So let's take a look at this again. So data contains all this. You can see that this is an object. Okay, so I cannot select this. Okay, I can select this. Lol. So this is an object. In this case, this is an error, but it's the same thing. So everything inside is called or is going to be accessed now using this data. Okay. So the name of the object right now that we are receiving is data. So data, you could also call it conditions or whatever. So data that current, that weather, that, not that, but underscore icons. This is an array for some reason. So we need to set it like this. So where that thing is, since this is going to be beginners friendly, then we need to take a look at everything that could cause us some problem in order to understand. So okay, I have this. So as I said, this object now is called data, and in order to access everything we need to say data that, and you can see we have this current and we have the weather icons. Okay, and the first one is the icon that we want. Okay, you can see that is black cloud.png. So and you will access the rest of the properties the same way as I'm going to show you. So this is going to set the source of the image, and now we're going to say image that set attribute again, and we're going to add the loading because of course lazy. All of these images are this should be okay like this. All of these images are pretty small. Okay, in case you need to do this with other applications and you want the lazy loading that is now implemented by default in the browser, you will use the loading attribute and add the lazy value. Okay, after this, let weather description equals to document that again create element. We're going to create a few more elements here. H4, so this is going to be an H4. Let weather description node. We need to add text inside this. Okay, so we need to create a new text node. This is how we're going to add text inside the new elements that are created. Since why we are not doing that for the div and for the image first, because the image doesn't need text, and because the div is just the container. Now, so whether does not document that create text node should be around here. Create text node. So remember we have the data object, that is the new name of the object we received from the API. We ask for the current property and we add or we look for the weather conditions. and it's the first inside that array. So let's take a look at this. So I'm using weather descriptions. Did I say? Weather descriptions is what I should be looking for. Okay. Descriptions. Okay, so that should be fine. Save, and this is going to refresh. Let's say Merida again. Okay, you will need to specify also some width and height for the image in order to work correctly, but that shouldn't be a problem. So I was looking for weather description. Let's move all these things. And you can see that it's an array. I don't know why. I guess that it's reused and they just filter. In case it's just one, they just add it to the array. And if you ask for condition for several days, then that should come inside like this, but that's just a guessing. So you can see that we are accessing that part. Now, in order to append the text inside the h4, because those two are now kind of in the limbo, okay, are out there inside the memory, but those are not coupled. So we're going to work with that using weather description, and we need to append child, so the text node is still an object or a node. So we need to add it inside the weather description, just like that. So inside the append child, we add, inside this method, we add the name of what we want to add, and it's going to append inside this first object that we specify. So that is done, and now let's go into the city equal document that create element. This one is going to be an h2, and we're going to do the same. So let's city node, we need to add a text node into this, so document that create text node. What this is going to be is data that request, that query. You can take a look at what I'm doing inside the Electron application. Inside, this is just inside the request and the query property. Just the same we did here inside line 15 and 16. I will show you. I will finish this and will show you in a second if you are curious about it, or if you are kind of lost. So city that append child, we need to append also the city node inside this. Now we have one more left to do, so it's the temperature. Temp for temperature document that create element. So this one is going to be just a div, and let temp node equals document that create text node, and this one is going to be data.current that temperature. Remember, all those are inside the object that we are receiving. So I think this one was like this, and I think it's in Celsius because it's in Mexico. I think, I don't know. It seems like because of the quantity that they give. And now append child, we append the temp node, the text node inside the temp, and now all this is now set, but as I said before, it's not appended inside the document, so it's not visible, it's not there, it's just outside inside the memory. So let's say div that, no, device oriental, no, div that append child image, div that append child. So we're going to append everything, the image, the city, and the temperature inside the div, okay, because the div is just a container. I forgot weather desk, div that append child, weather desk. No, it's not the node, it's just the object or the tag that we created, the element. And now, how is that we're going to append it? As I said, we're looking inside the main, so we need to append it inside the main. Document that, sorry, query selector, main. This is not an ID or a class, so we just add it without the dot and the hash. This is just a regular element, so we can look for it using the name, just like that. That append child, and to that we append the div. So this should be it, and we need to catch any errors that could happen and just say console.log error, or let's call it, because this should be like this. You can call it E, but you might get confused with this event. Okay, in this case we're not using the event inside this, it's being used here, but both are going to work, so that shouldn't be a problem. And that should be it. So let's take a look again inside here. Let's move this a little bit. You can also snap this, okay, to take the full screen. So let's say Cancun again, and you can see it adds the information. So if I say Merida, you can see that it removes these div conditions because we're setting that inside this line, because conditions div that is matching the conditions ID is being found, and since we want to remove that and populate it with the new information, this is what is doing, because if we remove this, it's going to add another div with an ID of conditions, okay, and that is not, first, it's an error, okay, it shouldn't be, you don't want to add another set of this, and is also an ID conflict. It's not semantically correct, although you could use those, okay, but it's not something that you want to show to people, you know. So I think that's it. So let me just, as always, Paris. You can see that is getting everything. Name city Paris, country France. Just like that, you can add whatever you want. They give you here the request query that I said is the Paris France. So this is what is showing. And just like that, we have the first application with Electron. Later, if you want, I can show you how to package this. So just ask for that if you want that. If not, then this is the end. So thanks for watching and see you in the next one.